Hey YouTube, what is up? This is Cody on The Real Sports Talk, bringing you pre-race video for the Sprint Cup race. And also tomorrow we have the Indy 500, so that's something to watch a little earlier in the day if you're looking for that on this Memorial Day weekend. Ryan Briscoe's starting on the pole for that, and it should be a good show. Chevy's an engine provider for the first time in that series, but I know I don't really cover that a lot, so I'm not really going to get in depth about that, but it should be a decent race if you guys want to tune in. It's looking like they're going to have a little pack racing, they're predicting, so the drivers are feeling really comfortable with the new cars at Indy, and it's looking to be a great show at the Indianapolis 500 here tomorrow. Jumping into NASCAR, we got the Coke 600, and that should be a good show. Longest race of the season for the Sprint Cup drivers. And before we get into that, I'm just going to recap the Nationwide Series race at Charlotte. Brad Keselowski ended up winning the race on fuel strategy. Denny Hamlin raced his way up to second after being a lap down after an issue with his carburetor and having to change that out. He was running faster than Keselowski at the end of the race because he had tires and Keselowski didn't. Keselowski stayed out along with Casey Kane and I believe some other guys on a stop with like 50 laps to go or something like that. And he just pulled out to a lead and there wasn't a caution at the end of the race. Early in the race, Travis Pastrana spun in his 99 Michael Waltrip Racing car, and he ends up finishing 24th, about 5 laps down. He spun on lap 6 and ended up being the first caution, but he did end up getting back in the race and getting a respectable finish there in, I think it's only his 3rd or 4th start in the Nationwide Series race. So decent for him, keeps his car fairly clean, didn't really hit much. Him and Danica are just doing a good job this year in keeping their cars clean, and appears that they, like the stuff they have been brushed up in hasn't been their fault, whether it's Danica or Travis. He is running great for just getting some experience, but we'll have to see as we move forward what they bring to the sport. Can't really say at this point. Although Danica did run decent as well, picking up a decent finish, and she kept her car clean all day. She looked a little racy at points, was in the top 10. I believe she finished in the top 15. I don't remember exactly the spot, but she did have a decent race, and she was running in the top 10 on that last restart with some of the top cars in the field. There's really only one long green flag run. We saw some motors give up, and we saw parts breaking in this. There were 7 cautions. The guy who had a prominent guy in this series, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., ends up going over 20 laps down, and he ends up finishing 26th after, I believe, a crankshaft problem. He was running up with the top cars in the field. He was like contending for a top 5 spot. If you were on the lead lap, he was passing those kind of cars. So he had a good finish. Kyle Busch ends up finishing 3rd. Their program in this Nationwide Series just keeps improving from week 1 at Daytona. They're just getting better and better, especially since they have 2 drivers in that car, in Kurt and Kyle Busch. Monster Energy's been sticking with them. We have Kevin Harvick in 4th place. Elliott Sadler, first Nationwide Series regular, in 5th, and Joey Logano in the 20 car gets 6th. James Buescher 7th, Justin Allgaier 8th, Sam Hornish Jr. In 9th, and Joey Coulter in the 21 car. Decent run for him. He ends up finishing in 10th. Elliott Sadler picks up some points, obviously, on Ricky Stenhouse Jr. I believe he's like within 15 now, and so that's going to be a race looking forward. 12 points behind Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Elliott Sadler is. So that's a race we got to look forward to moving forward for the championship. It looks like it's going to be between these 2 guys, and it's going to take something bad to happen for anyone to get into the thick of this championship hunt. There was a lot of side-by-side racing in this race, and I expect to see that tomorrow, but maybe a little more calm. Running side-by-side, there were some difficulties, guys getting loose, running alongside someone else. You just got to keep up with, especially in tomorrow night's race, you got to keep up with the transition of the track as it gets cooler. As the sun stops beating on the track, it's going to tighten up a little bit, and you might want to start your car a little loose. But that's something that is going to be dictated throughout the night, and how these guys adjust their cars to the racetrack, and whoever gets there at the end has their car perfect. Maybe even a little strategy plays into it like it did in this race. But I expect with the hard racing we see at Charlotte to have a caution late and possibly a green-white checker. And definitely, and that could be because equipment fails, engines fail in this longest race of the season. And we're going to see guys that are going to start up front that aren't necessarily going to stay there. I mean, like, because they don't keep up with the track. Like, when the sun's beating on it, as the sun goes down, it's going to change, like I just said. And the guys that run up front early probably won't be up there late. And some guys are good at that, and we could see them run up front. So in this race, Eric Almirola takes his second pole, and actually him and Marcus Ambrose had the front row, kind of an unlikely pair there. Definitely I'd look out for Keselowski, and Brad Keselowski in that 2-car won the race today to sweep the weekend, and Kevin Harvick also. He's a guy that's a late charger, and I think this could be his kind of race to win. He's good at making adjustments to his race car and keeping up with the track. And a lot of guys are pointing Jimmy Johnson as a favorite just because of his dominance last weekend, but I don't know if that's going to transition to this weekend just because some guys take chances, like the Ford guys last weekend. They blew 2 engines in that All-Star race, and they were experimenting. Carl Edwards came out and said that. That's not what they're going to be running, so it's just a matter of if those cars were within NASCAR's restrictions of engine policies and stuff like that, but they aren't necessarily going to last a whole 600 miles like they would during those little short segments and those races. Because if you remember, Jimmy Johnson only ran full throttle for 30 laps probably. His first segment and then the last 10. He was just kind of hanging around in the back for the rest of the time. So I don't know if that engine can keep up with this track. And I don't really expect guys to be back on their game, like the Ford guys, for instance. They'll be back in it, and they will be running the engines that aren't necessarily going to give out, as we saw in that All-Star race with 2 of them blowing up. Some surprises I might look at this week are AJ Allmendinger and Jeff Burton, just because I really liked the way Allmendinger raced the racetrack last weekend and not necessarily the cars around him. He was very aggressive, and he just looked like a guy that really wanted to win a race. And I haven't seen that from AJ Allmendinger in a long time. And he's just hungry to win a race and prove to everyone that this change to Penske, because he's had a poor year, it's not a mistake. And I think that this is really a race where AJ Allmendinger could come through, as I said, possibly on fuel strategy or tire strategy, something like that late. And I think the same thing for Jeff Burton. He ran decent in the practices, and I think he can really be a factor in tomorrow night's race. He might stick around for a little bit, like his teammate Kevin Harvick, who is known as the closer. He might kind of just stick around in the top 15, top 10, and then slowly move his way forward as we get to the end of the race. So we could see him in the front. Some guys that maybe where people are expecting to run well in this race that aren't necessarily going to do too well. Greg Biffle, who has been up there in the points for the whole season. He's been running very well. Has a bunch of top 5 finishes, top 10 finishes. I think this might be a week where he is forced to take a step back and possibly his championship hopes will take a back seat in this. I expect Greg Biffle's team to decline at some point this season. I just don't think that team, it doesn't necessarily have the experience, the championship experience, and the consistency, the record of consistency over a whole season. And I just think that he won't be running this at this level for the entire season. So I think it's going to probably come tonight. But we'll have to see at this point whether he will stay strong or he could prove me wrong. I don't know. I just have a gut feeling that Greg Biffle is going to start declining here as we approach this second half of the season. And also another guy that I don't think is going to do great tonight is Casey Kane. And that's because he loves running that high line. And over 600 miles, it only takes a little mental lapse to slap that wall and really knock your car out for the evening. I know these cars are getting more and more tough and more durable, but that could just be something that we could just see from Casey Kane. That's been a constant thing with him, and they've been real conservative the last few races. After the first few, him overdriving the car a little bit, getting over aggressive with the setup. We could see this week them revert back and kind of try to get a fresh start. I don't know if Casey Kane's going to be able to handle it. I definitely think he'll have speed in the car, but I don't know if he'll be able to harness that and run effectively for extended periods of time, especially if we get a long green flag run. A guy like Casey Kane could be in the wall, a guy that likes that high line, or someone like Mark Truex Jr. So that's also someone that I don't think is going to run great on this night. And he also didn't run that great in the last 2 practices either. So that's something that I look at and I say I kind of look at it for a little bit and don't really think Kasey Kahne's going to do well in this setting. Like I said, he ran great. He's probably going to have a fast car. He'll run well for a little bit. It's just he ran great in the All-Star race, and he almost won that segment. If he would have, who knows, he could have won it. But that's the environment that Kasey Kahne needs to be in. He needs to be in that short racing environment and those shootout kind of situations. That's what really suits Kasey Kahne's driving style. And this race, if there's a long extended period of green flag run, we could see him potentially getting into the wall. I think I've talked enough about that. So just kind of in conclusion, it's the longest race of the year. It's going to be taxing physically and mentally on drivers. They have to deal with the transition, and they also have to manage their equipment well, and just little things like getting trash on the grill and that sort of thing. We're going to have to see how guys manage that, adjust their cars throughout the night, and who's going to be there at the end. So I'd say my pick for this race is going to be Kevin Harvick, just because I think the closer is going to get it done in this environment on the big stage. I'll have a post-race video for you right here on the Real Sports Talk. Possibly one, I'll include a little bit about the Indy 500 as well. I'll probably just combine it into one video. So we'll just kind of get with that, and I'll see you then.